Well, I think for the most part, the biggest challenge is that most of the deforestation that people do in those parts of the world are perhaps out of necessity, and they don't have alternative sources. They don't have the income to employ machinery to do the agriculture, so they resort to cutting down the forest and burning it, basically as a way of preparing the land for agriculture. So it's a huge problem in the sense that the people that are doing this are really the poorest of the poor and do need a very special kind of approach in terms of developing their knowledge base, helping them with different kinds of techniques that can help them produce more along the tropical forest margins, but also growing their incomes at the same time. So we do try and employ, now we do a lot more of landscape approaches wherein people are encouraged to do things like agroforestry, to have practices that can allow them to achieve both economic objectives as well as protect the forest, conserve the forest, but can have a decent lifestyle.
Okay, and so give us a sense first of where in Africa are the big problems related to deforestation. What sort of countries are we talking about?
Well, I think we're talking about the Congo Basin countries in general. I think that's the biggest frontier at the moment. Countries along the Miombo woodlands, the tropical forest margins of Zambia, Tanzania, Sudan, some tropical forest areas, subtropical forest areas in Ethiopia. Those areas do have a lot of boundary, frontier issues, and that's where you have these interactions between farmers and forest areas, because forest lands are more fertile for them. When they clear it, then they get fertile soils that they plant for a couple of years, and when the fertility goes down, then they move to a new area because they don't have money for inputs such as fertilizer, and they don't practice different food systems. So it's widespread across all of Africa. The West African forest areas around Sierra Leone, Liberia is the same story, where you have Ebola at the moment. Guinea, it's really that Guinea forest area, the Congo Basin forest, and the Miombo woodlands in eastern and southern Africa.
Give me a sense about what you mean by landscaping. At conferences like this, there are lots of slightly niche terms which don't really mean anything to anyone outside, and agroforestry is one of them, although that perhaps makes more sense. Paint me a picture of what a landscaped farmland might look like.
Well, when we talk about a landscape approach, we're talking about looking at an area as a complete system, wherein you are promoting the sorts of practices that would allow planning in a way that people can do sustainable agriculture, people can do and meet their food needs, people can keep some areas for conservation, and in between people can have sort of farming systems and wood systems that can allow them to get their firewood needs and can get their income from trees and can get material for building. So we're talking about planning an area in a way that allows you to achieve both economic, social, and environmental objectives. So that's mainly what we work on, in summary.
And that seems like a fairly simple and straightforward objective. What do organisations like yours need? What does the general movement, particularly in Africa against deforestation, need? We see lots of headlines all the time, particularly in the UK, about deaths of rhinos, deaths of elephants linked to deforestation, and I guess that might be a kind of simplistic way of looking at it, but and lots of money is being thrown at that in particular. What, from your perspective, does your organisation and others working on this need? How much money is required? How much capacity building?
It's difficult to estimate how much is needed. I mean, I was talking to one of the Uganda negotiators on REDD+, and he told me that if he only estimated what they need to get Uganda to a point where they start doing REDD, where they really start implementing REDD, not even implementing fully, they would need something like $4 billion to really get things moving in Uganda alone. So there are all kinds of estimates, but I think the most important thing is to think about the people that live in the landscapes. What do they need? It's critical that we think about them from not only the biodiversity needs, the conservation needs, but what they also need in their daily lives for economic reasons, what they also need for building, what they need to send their children to school, income that they need. I think having a more holistic approach in which it's looked at from a development perspective as well as from a conservation perspective and a climate perspective, because the adaptation needs are perhaps as important as the mitigation needs, reducing deforestation. So if in a way they are all related, and that's what we work on in landscape approaches, where we look at how these objectives of adaptation and mitigation are connected, and what are the trade-offs and synergies between the incomes that these people need, their livelihoods, basically, every aspect of their livelihood. I think that sort of investment will be useful. And it does need a co-investment approach. You need a private sector to come in, because current public funding is not enough. So we need the private sector and all of us to co-invest in that process.